Hello and welcome back to Analog Comics. In this hobby of reading and collecting comics, there are certain obstacles that prevent us getting everything we want. And we usually want quite a lot. And the obstacles I'm talking about, they are all linked to availability. And of course, one of them is money. Very few of us have unlimited budget, meaning that we can order and buy anything we want as soon as it comes available. Yes, there are such readers and collectors too, but even they face the other obstacle, which is the physical availability. This could mean that the comic is temporarily out of stock, sold out, or it could be permanently out of print, sold out, and very hard to get. Or it might be the physical location of the comic that is the problem. It might be that the comic is available pretty easily in its market, but that market is in a different continent than you are, meaning that ordering from those markets makes it really expensive, and then it links back to that money issue. But in my opinion and through my experience, at least for me, the biggest obstacle has never been just money or the availability. It has been the language barrier. Language for me is the biggest obstacle of getting all the comics I want to read. Yes, I don't have nearly enough money to get all the comics I want in my life. And many of the comics I want, they are out of print or in the wrong continent and so on. But still, language is still the biggest obstacle that I crash into when I'm looking for new comics. You see, I'm a big fan of European comics. If you follow this channel, you already know that. Even in Europe, the language barrier is very much present. Like, I like a lot of Franco-Belgian comics. They are all in the French language. And that alone, to me, is a massive barrier. I don't understand French when it's in written form, and I get it even less when they speak it. And now, think about your own hobby of reading and collecting comics. Are there some comics you've seen that you just absolutely love? The graphics look awesome, but that comic is not available in your language anywhere in the world, or it's not in the language that you could fluently read and understand. Like, for me, English is the second option beside Finnish. And since you're watching this English language channel, I assume that for you also English is always an option, even if it's not your own language. But are there certain comics that you'd like to have, but you just know that they're not available? Or is it something that you have already kind of accepted? It's a corner of comics that you have accepted that it just doesn't belong in your life. It's like a black area where you know you're not going because there's great stuff there, but you know that they will never be translated into any language that you would understand. And if you have such comics, let me know them in the comment, because that's always a nice discussion of what is missing and where. Because I know I have followers in this channel, they are from all over the world. So I think what is missing in those particular markets, language-wise, it differs a lot. If you think of some expensive special deluxe editions printed out there, you might think that, you don't have at the moment money for them. But at least they are a possibility. There's something to dream about. You see them and maybe think that one day I'll have that. I'll save money and I get it. But I've seen that many times when it comes to a different language and you know that it's possibly never going to be available to you, you don't dream about them like that. You just kind of push them aside, and that is a shame. It means that there are so many doors closed in the comics universe. So many doors are closed, and they kind of define the area where you can exist within that hobby. But what if I told you that there's a solution to this? You see, now there's a software that you can use to translate comics in real time. Yes, this video will be about an application, software, an app. And the irony of that doesn't escape me. Like, I am the last person you should call if you have any problems with any software or computers. I would just maybe push the self-destruct button unintentionally every time. But this will be my first and maybe my last software-based video. The software I'm talking about is Google Search. And within that app, there's a function called Google Lens. And that allows you to translate any text in real time from any language to any language. Now, it might be that you are already familiar with that, or it might be that all of you are familiar with that. But I'll talk about it anyway, since I've only found it a month ago. I've been using it for a month and testing it for certain things, and I'll show you what I've been testing. But it made me think that since I'm quite old-fashioned guy, I'm not interested in all the new software and applications. I just want to read comics the analog way. So I thought that there must be some people like me who have just missed this thing completely. I mean, I could easily think many of my friends, well, they're from the same generation, so I could easily think many of them not knowing about many applications that would actually make their life easier if they only would know about them, but they have absolutely no will to look for them, or they don't even know what's possible these days. Now with the dawn of artificial intelligence, the genie is out of the bottle, and now it's in the hands of us, the regular people, the mortals. So I think there'll be a lot of stuff just going past us old people at least. And another thought that came to my mind is that even if you are aware of this Google Lens translator, it might be that you haven't connected the dots. You haven't thought how it could help you, particularly in the hobby of comics, how it could open the doors that have been closed to you so far. In fact, for me, it basically have removed the doors. I feel like now I can go anywhere in the comics universe. If I see some cool comic that looks really promising, but I can't understand what is said, what the story is, I can now order it and read it pretty fluently by using this app. Well, first of all, it's an app for mobile systems. So what it means that it needs a forward-facing camera to function. So it's available for iPads and phones. And I think this wasn't available at the beginning to Apple products, for example, but it is now. And the reason why I'm holding an iPad here as a prop is because I'm filming this with my phone, so I can't really show it to you at the same time. Okay, enough of the rant. First, I'll show you how to get it and how to navigate it and a little bit of the functions, and then I'll show you what I've been testing with it, because there's some interesting stuff that it can do and cannot do. The first thing you need to do is to go into the App Store of whatever system your phone or iPad is using. Mine are all Apple, so it's Apple App Store. And from there you need to find a Google Search app, and the logo looks like this. It's a free app, so you just click download, and I don't remember anymore if there was some kind of legal text that you had to agree to. But it just happens so automatically. But since it's Google, I'm not taking any responsibility. But if there's a legal text there, it has to be something along the lines like, "We, Mr. and Mrs. Google, hereby with your consent get to have all your personal information and sell it to the highest bidder. And P.S. if you don't agree or consent, we're gonna do it anyway. Oh, and by the way, we're already doing it." So just to remind you that I take no responsibility what downloading this app does to your life or your system or your security. So if you are very skeptical about this, maybe just wear your tinfoil underwear when you're using the app. That might help, I don't know. Once the app is in your tablet or your phone, you just click open it. And then from there, the only thing we are interested is this rectangular logo here. And you press this one, and that is the Google Lens. And once the Google Lens function opens, you can see that now your camera is on, and you can see what your camera is seeing. But at the bottom of the screen, there are certain different functions like search, text, shopping, places. You can search pretty much anything by dragging photos or pictures here, and Google will search something similar for you. But we are only interested of the function that is on the far left, which is translate. My phone says käännä, which is translate in Finnish. Now that we activated the translation feature within the Google Lens, it opens up a new panel at the top of the screen. And though there are two blue sections in it, the first one on the left, that is the original language. Let's say you have ordered a comic book in a language that you don't understand. Let's say it's like German for this case. So you just click the blue area and it opens a new kind of selection window, and from there you can find German and then just click German, and then you will have it on the left. Then the lens knows that you are now translating from German. And then on the right you choose the language, like the target language, what you want it to be. And it functions the same way. You can click it and then find the language that you want it to be. And now in both of these selection windows, you can see that there's a download button next to the language. If you push that, it will download that language into your mobile phone or in the iPad, so that you can use it also offline. If you are traveling somewhere, let's say you are traveling some other country and you decide to go to the comic store there, buy a comic that you don't understand, then it's good to have that language, both of those languages, the original language and the target language, so that they are downloaded into your phone, so you can use them offline. It's just cheaper that way, for not having to use the online services all the time. And to make it easier, you don't actually even have to recognize the original language that you are translating from, because the first option in that left panel is identify language. If you have chosen that, all you have to do is point your camera to the speech bubble or any text within that comic. It will take only a few seconds and it will know what language it is translating. Now, I did some testing with that function. I took certain panels to my laptop screen and then pointed my phone at it, and it immediately knew all the languages that I have chosen as a test. So it was pretty much instant, and it was already translating them at the same time. One thing I need to mention about the quality of the translations, I found that for me it works the best in English. I mean, translating into English. When I set it to translate it, all the stuff into Finnish, it did translate the words, kind of, but it didn't create any sentences. They were just separate words. Finland is grammatically challenging language. It's hard to speak it correctly. And another thing is that Finland is a small language. We are a population of only 5 million people, and there are many countries that have cities with more people than we have in the whole country. So it must be that those two factors are seen here, how it functions. I would understand the comic because there's the picture. It kind of tells you half of it, but then you see the words, and even though they are not correct sentences, I can make out what they're talking about and what's happening in the comic. But then I tried it in English. I tried it to make it to translate stuff into English, and that was a game changer. Immediately I started to see real, readable and coherent sentences. And at least for me, they're all actually pretty good sentences. There's nothing to complain about. Of course, if you are English speaking by default, if that's your number one language, then you might notice some nuances that I completely miss. But at least for my eye, they are really good sentences and easy to read. It made it just much more fun to read, because I didn't have to patch up the sentences in my head from some words that are loosely connected. So depending on what is your target language, what you want it to be, you might have different results. I would assume that other bigger languages like German or French might get the same kind of good results. Now I did some testing, like what it can do and what it cannot do, and I tried to find some challenging panels online. So I just googled some comics and had them on my laptop screen and put my phone next on top of it and scanned the screen and tried to see what happens. I tested the identify language feature many times and it always knew what language I was trying to translate. So that was pretty 100% accurate. But if you choose some language, let's say you put on the left panel, you put French as the language, the original language, and then you are zooming into, let's say, Polish, then it doesn't know. It really is looking for French. So that identify language is pretty good option because it just snaps into the correct language immediately. Then I wanted to test this software's ability to identify different fonts, because at least in Europe, many of the older comics, the fonts are handwritten. They're not really accurate. They're a bit here and there. So I looked for some old Blueberry comics because Jean Girard, he used to do the lettering by hand. So they're a bit more stylish. But that was very easy. This identified it immediately. Then I tried some Asterix ones, and it even identified the noises like bang, boom, all those effects. Not all the text is necessarily written from left to right. It can go diagonally. Like some of the speech balloons, they were left to right, but then some of the effects, the noises or shouting, it was in a much more different fonts, like bigger text, and they were placed in between the speech balloons and so on. But still, this software translated them all and fit them all within the speech balloon. That's one of the awesome things also, that the text that is translated, it usually shrinks into the speech balloon. So it really looks like it was just swapped with the language you want, and it's in those speech balloons. So it makes the reading again much more fun. Then I remember that Sandman comic has really different kind of lettering. There are many characters that have their own style of lettering throughout the series. And one of the most, I thought to be the most difficult is Delirium, Morpheus' sister. So because her text is never the same. Some of the text, like some of the letters are small and then they are bendy and then they go big and small, even within the same word. But even that was translated pretty well. But the software also kept the letters the same size. It tried to keep them same size, so the speech balloons were a bit messy, so to speak. But then again, I think Sandman is available in more languages than there are languages on Earth, so I don't think that will be a problem, but it was a really good test bed. And to get the good result for the translation, you need to have the text in focus. I noticed that when I do it, I have problems with my eyesight, and I try to put the phone too close to the speech bubbles, because in order it to be in focus, I need to lift the phone a bit from the comic book, and that makes the speech balloons a bit too small for my eyes. But that's because I should get new eyeglasses. The ones that I have are not enough anymore. The problem is in my eyes and in the glasses. They're not in the software. But I found myself pushing the phone closer to the page in order to get a bigger picture. But because the phone's lens can't focus so hard, so close, I needed to lift it up to get a good result. And so while I was fiddling with my phone trying to find the focus point, I also noticed that if it's kind of on the edge of good focus, the translation can be funny. Sometimes it translates the same words different way. And you kind of understand that, okay, there's something off now. So what I do is I just kind of flip it, lift it or just put it to the side for a second so that it loses the focus, and then put it back and then snapped. It gives you better translation. I don't know how to explain. Sometimes there are some words that are not translated, or it changes them in a weird way. And then if you kind of flip it and put it back, then it decides to understand the text it's seeing, and it gives you a good sentence. Oh, and one more test that I need to mention that I did. I think only a comics fan would test this with the translator software. But yeah, I searched the list of Asterix character names in French. And then I pointed the Google lens on those names. And lo and behold, it knew that Panoramix, the village druid, is in English Getafix. That was pretty amazing. So someone somewhere has written that in the code, or I don't know if it's an artificial intelligence based thing, but it knew that Panoramix means Getafix in English. I didn't test it in Finnish, because in Finnish it would be Aquapitix, different name. I still need to do that. But yes, it didn't know other characters. I think other characters, it just tried to change the French name into more English looking name, but it didn't know what they were. But I'm sure as these kind of software and the artificial intelligence gets better, this kind of service gets better and better all the time. I only found this app and its feature about a month ago, and it made me think this a bit further. What if these translation tools become so efficient and good in any language, from any language to any language, so that even the translation to Finnish is like perfect? Would we anymore need those translated comics? If some companies are unwilling or they just don't do it, it means that now they are not the gatekeepers anyway. Now I can choose what I want to read. There has been so many comics behind the language barrier for me for decades, because I love the European comics, but I don't know the languages. So would this mean end of translation or the end of translator as a profession? I don't think so, because, well, Asterix that we talked about, that's a good example. Asterix in many countries is seen as a well-translated comic book. I've heard many good things about the English translation, and I know that the Finnish translation has been really, really good. The language is good. It keeps the puns and jokes intact, but more local to Finland. So I get to have as much fun as the reader in France, for example. And that takes tremendous talent. And I don't think that any artificial intelligence is going to be on that level for a while, because then you have to know the current memes and how the world works to be able to make a really good original story as good in any other language. You have to understand so many levels of cultures and the figure of speech and all kinds of sayings. But for example, my addiction, Wake, which is originally called Sillage. I have now Wake, I have it in English, was it 7 volumes? Then I have the same volumes in Finnish, but then I have 3 more. It goes in Finnish to number 10. And then it ended. It ended in English, it ended in Finnish. But I am an addict to this series. So now I've been buying few volumes in German, and then even more in Danish. And in fact, this Danish version was the first one where I tested this Google Lens app. And it was so good, so good. I got to, because there's lots of political games here, intricacies like plots. Even if I know Danish, I can read Danish okay, but I also understood by using this translator software that I was missing certain important details. Those scheming bits, they were there within those sentences, and you'd have to know exactly what they say, not just word here and there. And I was already thinking to translate this by hand. I mean, looking up each word one by one. But there's no way I'm going to do it now when I have the software to do it. And it means that now I can finally conclude the series. There are all over 20 albums in this series. And the furthest I can go in Finnish is 10. and in English it's even less. So this ability to translate anything immediately has really opened my options. Now I can order this series in any language and read the whole story. Having said that, if they would bring back the Finnish versions or the English versions, I would rebuy them, because that would still be the best reading experience. I wouldn't have to kind of take my phone every now and then and put it over a speech balloon, because it is a slower process and it's not exactly as much fun as just looking at the picture. And then there are some comics that I'm still wondering why haven't they been translated into English more. It's like Jean Girard's Blueberry. Jean Girard, also known as Moebius. Moebius is so popular everywhere, even in USA, that I'm kind of, I don't know why they haven't reprinted it in English. It was published in English years and years ago, but most people don't know about it, or they don't even remember it, and they've been so long gone that there would be now room for that. But you know, if you're a big fan of Moebius and you want everything he has done, and Blueberry is definitely one of those, one of the best Western sagas ever made, also by art. So now you have possibility to read it. Yeah, you could order those integrals and go through it with the system, maybe. I'm sure this is not for everybody, but I'm sure that it will be interesting for the comics enthusiasts, those who have seen certain comics here and there, but they have been at least so far behind that language barrier, so that you haven't even thought about ordering. You kind of forgot or decided to leave it. But now I think with this kind of help from the software, maybe, you know, if you want to test it, take just one volume of something, don't buy the whole series, or just take a comic that only is concluded in one volume. So reading one comic like that would tell you if this is something that you are willing to do to enjoy those foreign language comics. And that was one of my weirdest videos so far, me talking about software. There's a big chance that this will never happen again, but thank you for watching again, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye.